Peter? Okay, I think we are ready to open our meeting. I'm going to call the meeting to order at 8:06 p.m. Eastern Time. Israel Balderas, could you please take roll call?
Will do. All right. Claire.
Here.
Israel here. Ashanti.
Here.
Emily.
Here.
Daniela. I know I saw her. I know she's there. Maybe
Sorry, I wouldn't let here.
That's good. I had seen you. Jody. I think you said she might be.
Yeah, she's on her way in from the Naja.
Adam.
Here.
Kevin. I know
Here.
I saw him too. And Peter.
Here.
All right.
Here.
Madam President, everyone is here except Jody, so we do have a quorum.
Great. Thank you, Israel.
Yep.
I want to thank the board for making time tonight on such short notice to get together, and also to everybody else who's joining us on the meeting. Just a few words before we begin our agenda. We come together in solidarity tonight following the Friday morning raid by law enforcement of the Marion County Record newsroom in Marion, Kansas. By all accounts, the raid was an egregious attack on freedom of the press, the First Amendment, and all the liberties we hold dear as journalists in this great country. From the moment they learned about the raid, SPJ members have been speaking up to demand justice and suggest ways to help the newspaper and its staff recover from this brazen attack. Tonight's meeting addresses one of the strongest resources SPJ offers, the Legal Defense Fund, and how it can be used to assist our fellow journalists in Kansas. I want to direct you to the links. We have, the agenda is available in spj.org, and we included some links on there so that, just to give you some context, to catch up on some of the details. Since the agenda was prepared this afternoon, two really credible stories have been added to the list. The Associated Press released a story this afternoon about the incident, and so did the New York Times. So the links are there for your context, and also a link to the Legal Defense Fund on our homepage that you can look at that and also see what our request form is like, just for your reference. Okay, so I'm going to move down. I'm on item number 4, and I think we are ready to entertain a motion so that we can open the discussion about tonight's issue.
Yeah, Madam President, point of inquiry on the agenda you have about the SPJ Legal Defense Fund, and I'm wondering if for those who are here who may be new, and I know one of the board members raised it regarding the process of what the process goes through, and I wonder if we could explain the process and why maybe under these circumstances, extenuating circumstances, maybe why we're shifting a bit, and then if Mark Balin wants to add to that, we can certainly do that to inform. But again, I just thought...
Well, that's a great idea. That's a great idea. I think we should stop and do that right now. And Israel, you and Mark Balin, our counsel, can explain give us some context about the LDF, the fund, and the process. That would be a great introduction.
Sure.
Also, absolutely. I just want to point out, I'm sorry that we have Fred Brown here today as the parliamentarian. I just wanted to say hi, Fred. Thank you for coming tonight. Okay, so Israel, do you want to give a brief intro about LDF Fund?
Absolutely. Again, for those who don't know, my name is Israel Balderas. I am the chair of the Legal Defense Fund. Serving on the committee is the current president, the future president, Ashanti, Roy Gutterman, who is a professor of law at Syracuse, and then Mark Balin, who is our legal counsel. Under normal circumstances, there is a process whereby people can apply for grant funding from the Legal Defense Fund. As many of you know, this is a very unique account. It can be tapped for providing journalists with legal or direct financial assistance. We collect and then we distribute this money. Usually the committee meets and we go through a vetting process. People apply for the grant. There's a series of questions that we ask in the application process. What we want to know is how would the grant further the First Amendment cause that the SPJ champions. And we want to know what is the legal theory of the case, what's going on. Does it involve, for example, a defamation lawsuit? Does it involve a Freedom of Information Act gathering of information? Does it involve other kinds of legal issues that the journalist or the newsroom may face? Once that application is submitted to the committee, then the committee members get together and we look at the application process. And Mark Balin, along with another attorney who also volunteers her work with the LDF, what they'll do is they'll call the attorney of record that is involved in the case. And that way we can further find out, not just from the applicant, but from the attorney itself, what is the posture of the case? What are we talking about? Are we talking about, is this a preliminary part of the case? Is this already at trial? Is this motion to dismiss, right? We want to know the legal aspects of the case. And then once the attorney once the attorneys have talked to the attorney of record and we've looked at the application process, then the committee members meet again and we vote whether or not to grant $5,000. That we can do that $5,000. We can go ahead and give that grant without the approval of the board. Now, if the committee feels that more money has either been requested, and we have found from the attorney why large amount of money has been requested, and we think that it would further the mission of SPJ, then that request would go to the board above $5,000, and then the board would vote to then go ahead and approve that grant after hearing from both the chair and from our attorney. Now, Mark, as I understand it, you've been in communication with the attorney who represents Marion County newspapers. Is that correct?
Yes, it is, Israel, and I think that was a great summary of the LDF process. And I think this is a situation where, and frankly, I think we even have it on the website, where if there is an emergency issue, this application process can be condensed to as little as minutes or hours, as opposed to days and weeks that it usually takes. And as a matter of fact, they even say on the website, I think we have on the website, that you can call national headquarters of SPJ if you have a legal issue that needs emergency attention. This is a little bit unusual, and I think to Kevin's point, we usually get the request. We're usually receptive, and here we're being a little bit more proactive, of course. But nonetheless, I tried to follow the process that Israel outlined, and I contacted the lawyer that I believed was retained by the newspaper. The Reporters Committee mentioned it in an email that they sent out, that they were coordinating with him. His name is Bernard Rhodes, from a firm called Lathrop in Kansas City. And I actually know Bernie from decades ago, really. He's been practicing law for many years, and he's represented the TV stations in Kansas City, and he's a very well-known media lawyer in Kansas. And so I was not surprised to see that he was retained by the paper. I spoke to Bernie yesterday, and he confirmed that he was in fact retained, and that he certainly welcomed the SPJ's assistance, financial assistance, but also any other assistance as well. And I did say, though, that if the SPJ was going to make a public announcement about financially assisting, that I wanted to make sure that was okay with them. And he said he was going to check with his client, and he did, and they did say it was fine for us to do what the LDF committee usually does, which is usually publicize grants and so forth that they made. And so I think And the other thing that Israel pointed out, which is true and important, I think, for the LDF committee to examine is sort of what are the merits of this case? Is this going to be a case where we're going to throw this money at it and it's just going to flail and fall flat on its foot, or even create bad law? And that's something that we certainly wouldn't want to do, because while the fund is there to help people individually, we are always looking to do things with the fund's money because it's a limited resource that will have broad impact. And so if we assist someone with their legal fees and it pays their legal fees, but we wind up creating bad law for journalists around the country, well, then that's really not necessarily a great result. Even though we might have helped an individual journalist in that particular instance, which is still a good thing perhaps, but not necessarily doesn't have the broader impact. So that's something that we will need to further develop, because the information is still pretty limited. I've reviewed the public reports, and right now it looks like this is an instance of where a news organization has received information, was not involved in illegally obtaining the information. And that's key, because reporters and journalists all the time are receiving information. And to criminalize that act of receiving information when they had no part in obtaining information, even if that information had been originally illegally obtained, that's very serious. And in the Supreme Court, as I'm sure Israel knows, but maybe many of you others don't know, the Supreme Court really addressed this issue in a case called Bartnicki. And in the Bartnicki decision, the Supreme Court basically said that if a news organization just receives information passively that turns out to have been information that was obtained illegally, but they had no involvement in that illegal act, any illegal acts, then they have committed no crime. And if there's no crime, then there's no basis for probable cause that they committed a crime, which means that there's no basis for the search warrant, and there's no basis for the police department to raid a newspaper's offices or an editor or publisher's home. And there are other processes that they can use. They can issue a subpoena, and the subpoena can then be challenged, and then the newspaper can go to court and argue its case. Here, that they didn't have an opportunity to do that. The police department went into the to the court, got the prosecutor got a search warrant, and then went and just took the information. So I think there are some very important principles here. The lawyer who's handling it obviously does so as well. And the Reporters Committee put together a very strong letter that they sent outlining all of the legal issues. They sent that to the police chief today. SPJ joined that letter as a signatory, along with probably 30 or 40 other of top journalism organizations and media outlets. Just about every national media outlet there is, major national media outlet, signed onto that letter. And so I think that will sort of check some of the boxes for us on the application, which and contains a lot of different things, such as, is this case going to get media attention? Well, that's already happened. It's definitely going to get media attention. It has gotten media attention. Is this case, raise an important issue of law? Absolutely, it does. There is one caveat, though, and that is, if it turns out that someone from the newspaper was involved in illegally obtaining the information, that could be problematic, because that is not accepted. And I think that is the one issue that the police department sort of, I think, holding on to right now, the police chief, by saying that he wants to investigate whether they were involved. But I think our legal position is going to have to be, when I say our, I mean the newspapers, is going to have to be that they have to have more than just a speculation, that's just a guess to say that the newspaper, there has to have some type of evidence that they can point to say that the newspaper was involved somehow in criminally obtaining the info. But I put that out there because if the committee is going, or if the board now is going to approve a legal fee thing, and it turns out, though, that there were the facts as the newspaper has so far reported them, turns out not to be the case, that's something I think the committee or the board will need to just consider in granting funds. because certainly when we grant funds on the LDF, we typically do a longer process of sort of due diligence and vetting to make sure that the funds are going to be spent for a worthwhile cause.
And let me just add to that for the caveat purposes. The board has reached out to the police chief, thanks to the work of Adam. He reached out to police chief. The police chief sent SPJ a letter. That letter has been widely reported because that police chief has gone out there and said, this is why we're doing it. And he's citing as controlling authority as to why they were able to seize this under the Privacy Protection Act, which is a federal law. I've looked at the federal law. It's in the Department of Justice website. And I have to say, even with the police chief saying that he believes there's probable cause to believe that the person possessing the material has committed or is committing a criminal offense, and that's what the police chief said to the board, I would argue that the law says that there are other things that are required beyond his probable cause to believe, right? The law says there is reason to believe that the immediate seizure of such material is necessary to prevent the death or the serious bodily injury to a human being. There's reason to believe that the giving of notice pursuant to the subpoena would result in the destruction, alteration, or concealment of such material. And then, therefore, you'd have to show this in the probable cause. We don't have that probable cause affidavit. That's why you would need a subpoena. And I would say, Tim Stauffer, who's here, who's attending, he put a note on the meeting chat. Tim Stauffer is the president of the Kansas Press Association. And as he puts it out there, the KBI is now involved. And so certainly they face an uphill battle. So I would say the burden is not on the newspapers to prove that they haven't been involved. Right? I would take the argument that we are innocent until proven guilty. The burden is on the government. And furthermore, the First Amendment says this is an egregious act and there's a process. So I would at least, ask the board to really think the broader message. The broader message is that government cannot do this. This is an egregious act. And if you do this to one of us, you do it to all of us. And so with that, I would say that's what I want the board to consider, even with the caveat that Mark has put out. I would counter that this is an important act that we really need to send a message that you cannot do this. You need to follow the law. And I would argue the law was not followed here. With that, I turn it over to the chair.
Okay, thank you, Israel, and thank you, Mark, for giving us that context before the motion, which is very helpful. I would like to just clarify or highlight, Mark Balin mentioned a letter, and which just became available this afternoon. And Emily, our board member, has put that link in the chat to the letter. Thank you, Emily. It's Reporters Committee for Freedom of the Press, and we are one of 34. SPJ is one of 34 news organizations, media organizations that have signed on. So it's a powerful letter. It's written to the Chief of Police in Marion, Chief of Police in Gideon Cody, Marion Police Department. So it's addressed to him with all the legal points in the case. It's really well done, well researched, very powerful. So we are on that list of news organizations, and it's there in the chat. It's also posted on spj.org. Okay. Adam, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just have a quick question for Mark. So you said you spoke with the attorney for the newspaper today and that they welcomed SPJ contributing these funds.
Correct.
Okay, cool. The reason why I ask is, and I'm going to support this because, as Israel said, there's a really important symbolic nature here. I spoke with the editor of the newspaper earlier today, Eric Meyer, I believe his name is, and he was under the impression that he told me he'd been told from his lawyer that their insurance was going to cover everything that they needed right now. And I don't know if that's true or not. That's just what he told me. I would still support pushing this forward because I think we don't know what they're going to need and they might not know right now either. But the reason why I say that is because I wonder if we should phrase the motion to make the money available for a certain period of time, just in case they, if they wind up not needing the money, we will be able to absorb it back.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely right. The lawyer did not mention to me anything about the insurance. Maybe he didn't know about it at the time. But I would say, having done cases like this, in the sense that the client often thinks they have insurance coverage, it's not always the case. The insurance companies might very well claim that it's not covered under the policy. Even if it is covered under the policy, they might have make a reservation of rights, which means that they might say that if there were, additional facts that come out, they might not support it. And they oftentimes don't necessarily pay all of the legal fees. They might only pay up to a certain portion, and there's a deductible. Sometimes deductibles can be anywhere from $5,000 or $10,000 to as much as $50,000 or $100,000. So I think the lawyer, even if he knew about the insurance company money or insurance policy, he might not have mentioned it to me because he thought that they would probably still need probably some additional financial assistance. I think that SPJ could, make a contingent, could do contingencies with this. There's all different ways that the LDF funding, can happen. It can be a secondary source. It can be contingent on, them needing it, things like that. But since the board is all here and we're discussing these issues, I would recommend that Claire, you go forward with your meeting, and if it turns out that the funding is not immediately needed, well, we can have it in reserves in case it is, or something to that effect.
Okay, so I'm just trying to think of how I should phrase the motion. Should we just I make a motion to approve the LDF's recommendation to give $20,000 to the Marion County Record.
Yeah, actually, can I make one other comment on the process, because, and I think this is important for the purposes of your motion. So the way we typically do the finance, the funding on an LDF grant is that the committee votes, and up to $5,000, they allot the money. But that's not the grant is not then just turned around and given. What happens is the lawyer is asked to submit an invoice at a certain time throughout the case or at the end of the case. And then once we receive the invoice, we review it, and then we forward it on, in this case, to Jennifer, to the executive director, to say, okay, this was approved by the committee on X date, and here's the lawyer's invoice. It looks in order. Please, pay this out. And so I think we would follow a similar process here, where we would, to Mr. Rhodes, the lawyer for the Marion County Register or Record, we would say to him, send us an invoice and we will review it. And, if it is in compliance, because again, he could, we look at the invoice to make sure we're paying for the legal fees for that matter and for that issue that we approved, that the committee approved, because sometimes the lawyer might do other things for the client and it might be on the same invoice or something like that. So we'll say, send us an invoice, we'll review it, and then we'll pay it. So you could approve, the committee or the board approves, let's say $20,000 tonight. It's not going to write a check for $20,000 tomorrow. It will get an invoice, and it will eventually pay on those invoices.
And if any money that doesn't get spent, we would then just retain it.
You retain it, exactly.
Okay. Cool. I just wanted to make sure.
So to that end, so we can move the discussion further, Madam Chair, I would say that I make a motion that the board approve the funding of up to $20,000 in a grant for the Marion County newspaper legal action.
I'll second that.
A second by Emily. Thank you. Okay, discussion among the board members.
I would just say I want to give congratulations to Israel and Mark for very thoroughly explaining the process, because yesterday I had questioned going forward with this unless we had the process followed. Israel, you have laid it out. Mark has explained it correctly. And I think everybody on here is a lot smarter about the Legal Defense Fund and the process we follow. So thank you both for doing that. I appreciate it. And I definitely will support what we're going to do here.
And Kevin, I know you had asked this question in an email, and I didn't respond back to you. I just want to make sure that we informed the board, because you said, how did we get to $20,000? Remember, keep this in mind. And Mark, you can correct me, or you can add to this. But these are now two legal cases. There's the criminal case, right, that the attorney is going to file with the judge that approve the search warrant. So that's going to be one, right? And that process is going to have to go out, and it's going to have to be fought. But the law, the Privacy Protection Act, that is a federal right of claim. So at some point, if this police chief violated the process of the Privacy Protection Act, qualified immunity doesn't attach to this act. So therefore, under the law, if he violated that law, then there is now a private claim against the police chief. And certainly we've seen the news. This raid led to the death of one of the co-publishers. And so certainly I would make the argument that one of the federal right of claims would be, look, but for what you did, we wouldn't have the death of this precious person. So that's why we would argue $20,000 is certainly a lot, but we're talking about two different issues that we're looking at. Mark, and please correct me if I'm wrong on this.
No, I think you're absolutely right. They should have a 1983 claim, a Section 1983 claim, and eventually, actually, they could get attorney's fees for that from the government if they prevail. But that's a long way down the road, and so I think this type of funding would be helpful to them to deal with the criminal aspects, to deal with potential civil claims that they have. And then in the end, if they do get a lot of money in a settlement, let's say from the government, because it's not unheard of in these 1983 claims for news organizations to actually receive money from the government for violations of their civil rights, in this case, their First Amendment rights, they can decide whether, and we can decide, the SPJ could decide whether they would want to be reimbursed. But that's a long way down the road.
All right, thank you. Daniela Ibarra, board member, has her hand up.
Hi, I think it's a no-brainer that we should support this way. I do have a question for Adam. I know you're the one that came up with the 20,000 number. Just for clarification for our members, how do we get to that number?
Thanks. It was a little bit arbitrary. I knew we usually give out around 5,000, so I wanted a number above that. I think when I originally emailed it out, it wasn't as a motion. It was sort of just to generate conversation, at least initially, and it sort of just stuck. So it seemed like a good number. It still seems like a good number, I think. Also, I think, Israel, correct me if I'm wrong, we have about $75,000 in the legal defense fund.
That's correct. Last time we checked, we had $75,000 for that. It
might be a little bit less. I think we did make the payment out to. It was a payment that was owed to for an award of about $5,000. So I think it's around 70. I think, but
yeah. So I was trying to pick a number that would have an impact, but wouldn't like totally deplete the fund either. So.
And remember, that's a separate fund from operations. So I know the board has been concerned with how tight we are in our operations fund, but the legal defense fund is a separate account from operations, which is also a separate account from the First Amendment fund that we have. That is a completely different account.
Board member Peter Seke has a question. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's actually very brief comment. First of all, I wanted to thank Israel and Mark for their excellent explanation. Not only am I more educated on the LDF process, but I've been on the road for 2 days. I wasn't even aware of the case until about an hour ago when I got home. So I also thank you guys for the excellent recap of the case. And if there ever was a matter that we have to show solidarity on, because if it happens to this news organization, it can happen to anybody. This is such a textbook example of what the LDF ought to be out to do. And thank you all for that explanation. Anyway, I'm My brains are still on the highway. Sorry for the rambling, but thank you.
Okay, thank you, Peter. I'm just looking around to see if there are any other board members who want to comment or question. Doesn't look like it. Okay, so we'll open this up to public comment now. And I see one person's hand up. Adam Sennett, would you please help me with timekeeping? We usually put a 2-minute limit on public comments. So if you could help with that, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Not so sure we're going to need it. We don't have a big crowd, but let's put it in place. Derek Muirs.
Hey guys, just much like Adam, I spoke with the editor over the weekend too. They seem to have every piece of equipment that they need. I offered to go out there and drive out to Kansas and take some computers, and then I got with a printing press friend of mine here in Ohio who offered to do some printing if they needed it. But he also spoke with the editor. It seems like they're still going to be able to get their publication out on Tuesday despite the funeral plannings and the computer stuff. So they seem to be okay with equipment, but totally much more egregious than what I had to go through here in Ohio. And I think it's great that you guys are making some action and taking some action forward. And it's certainly going to be a tough case for them, and they have a lot to deal with. But it sounds like they're still going to be able to produce something on Tuesday, which is, I think, great that they're still going to be able to do that. But I called out there to make sure they had the equipment, and they claimed that they were able to get some replacement equipment in with the help of the other news organizations in Kansas.
Great. Thank you, Derek, for sharing that information. Good news. Let's see. We have identified Tim Stauffer there.
Hi there. I'm really sorry. We've been on a lot of Zoom calls. I'm actually Emily Bradbury,
Emily.
the executive director of the Kansas Press Association. I just want to thank you all for what you are doing. I've had multiple members of different organizations, yours included, reach out to support us. So we are ready and willing to take this fight as far as it'll go. And we know that this could set a dangerous precedent for journalists across the nation. And we are determined that it's not going to happen on our watch. So thank you. Thank you so much. And we appreciate everything you're doing.
Great. Thank you so much for being here.
And may I say again, everybody can speak, but thank you for what you all are doing in Kansas, because certainly it's got national attention, but I think the heavy weight is going to be lifted by you all there in Kansas. So we stand with you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here tonight. We have another organization here on hand. I'm just going to introduce her. Beth Potter, you can introduce yourself and your organization. You're eager to help out as well, right?
I offered to help, but I'm happy just to listen today. Yeah, I just said, like what Derek said, I'd be happy to go and take equipment or whatever else you all might need in Kansas.
Can you just tell us your organization?
I was working for the Journalism Trust Initiative. So the idea of the professional standards, I actually spoke at the Kansas Press Association. So hi, Emily.
Also, just want to quickly reiterate something Derek said. When I spoke to Eric Meyer today, he said they were going to get a paper out come hell or high water, were his exact words. So,
yeah. Do we know how that's happening exactly?
I had a very short conversation with him. So,
if I may, Madam Chairwoman, from what I understand, it's a lot of the news organizations in Kansas have come together to give them the equipment that they need, and maybe the lady from Kansas who just spoke can elaborate a little bit more on this.
Okay. That's great. I'm curious about it myself.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. They left 2 computers, and he had a computer that he had just decommissioned. So he's kind of linked all of those together. They were working on it. I just talked to them a couple of hours ago. Their deadline's Tuesday at midnight. He said they're going to have something out, and we have a lot of organizations buying full page ads in their paper. The real sticky situation right now is legal notices, because here in Kansas, we have 2, but the budget hearing and a revenue neutral rate notice, which has to be done, or else it's going to push all of those budgets back in the county. And he's the official county and city newspaper. So what's a really great story about this is that here in Kansas, you can do what's called a home rule. And you can say, well, we're going to go with another paper. Well, the city tried to do that and called the competitor. And he said, I don't think so. No way. I am not doing that. So everybody, the unity is amazing, and it was a good chunk of money. And that publisher said, I don't think so. You're not going to involve me in this, and I will not allow you to do this to this newspaper. So he's getting a lot of solidarity, and yeah, people all around. We even offered to print him for free, and he's like, no, I think we've got it. So Eric's doing everything he can, and the staff was working in the office this afternoon trying to get out that paper.
Wow. Fearless and persistent. We love those two qualities in a journalist. That's great news. And I mean, I guess it'll be it's unknown and indefinite when the equipment would be returned. Mark Balin, can you just let us know, like, when could the newspaper expect the law enforcement to release the equipment? Could it be months?
Yeah, it could be months. I mean, if it's a criminal case, and as long as the criminal investigation is ongoing, it would be very unlikely that they would return equipment unless they've come to the conclusion that they're going to drop the charges.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. Can I just add something real quick? This is Molly.
Yeah. Hold on, Molly. I'll get to you in 1 second. Well, go ahead. You can go ahead. Where are you from? When you tell us where you're from.
I'm president of the Kansas Pro Chapter, SPJ.
Oh, welcome.
Chapter. We just had our an emergency meeting that got out about 30 minutes ago. Anyway, I spoke to the publisher today, and he actually thought they might get things returned this week, but I don't know how he knows that or why he knows it, but it would be after his Tuesday deadline. And we came up with, as an organization, with some ideas for us to help him. I guess we'll see. The Wichita State University Sunflower has they offered their sunflower staff to help if needed, to help. Others have helped, just volunteered to like type in legals if they needed. So we just now need to get to him and see what he does need. When I talked to him earlier today, it sounded like he kind of had it. It was just he needed more hours in the day to recreate ads and do what he needs to do to get things out on Tuesday. But we're going to follow through anyway with.
That's great.
Thank you all.
Thank you for the update. Quick follow-up question, Molly. I'm a longtime print journalist. Is the record printed in that very historic building that we see pictures of, or is it printed elsewhere? Do you happen to know?
I don't know. They actually get their paper printed in Hutchinson.
That's what I thought. Outsourced.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
And it looked like Emily had her hand up.
Yeah, I'm going her next. Yep. Okay, Emily Block.
I think Forrest beat me, so I'd like to defer to him first, if that's okay.
Okay, Forrest, is that you?
That's me.
Okay, go ahead.
I'll be real quick. Molly, I'm on the board of Kansas Pro Chapter, and shout out to Fred Brown. Fred and I served on the national board back in the dark ages. He was 15, I was 40. But we did have a meeting. Wichita State stepped up. And Molly, I just want to brag on her. She's taken the lead to really get our chapter motivated, involved. And I believe this is going to be a blessing in disguise for us. And that I'd be willing to bet by the end of next week, we'll have doubled our membership to where it should be. So thank you for the support. And if it can happen here, it can happen anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Thank you, Forrest. Emily Block.
My brain is spinning and I have a lot of ideas, so I'll try and keep it brief. Obviously, I support Legal Defense Fund, $20,000. I think like Danielle and others have said, that's a no-brainer. But I'm thinking about ways that we can continue to extend our help beyond that. So the first thing that came to mind is, could we buy a full-page ad and run that joint letter in it? Is the first thing I thought of. The second is, can we help with fundraising? Could we run like a come hell or high water, the paper's coming out t-shirt? And could we make that a fundraiser? Could we, let me see, since the Wichita State Sunflower offered staffers to help, which I think is incredible and just like a beautiful like idea of what our field is supposed to be, maybe we could sponsor some of those students to get SPJ memberships if they don't already have them, because I think that's just such a beautiful gesture, and I want to make sure that we support them. And the other thing is that I think Molly had mentioned that they're really struggling to recreate ads. Can we maybe reach out to our friends at PRSA and see if like the public relations side can help with donating ad resources that are far beyond my grasp? So just some quick thoughts, but I want to make sure that we keep that momentum up and we're doing what we can to show support. And I appreciate everyone on this call.
Those are great ideas, Emily. Creative and strong ideas. Thank you so much. I made a note of them. Let's go to Don Myers.
Thank you. First, I have to agree. It's like this is a well, duh, as far as the Legal Defense Fund. Yeah, think it's a great idea. I also think we need to be able to react a little bit more quickly because I have yet to see a statement on the SPJ website on this subject. And basically, this is what SPJ is about. We should be, pretty much, the first ones in and saying, yelling foul about this and defending the First Amendment.
All right, I'll respond to that, Don, as president. Yeah, this came to light on Friday night at about 11 o'clock. And we did issue a statement last night. It's on our social media chapters, all of them, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter. We did issue a statement. So it did get out there last night, but we can't always operate 24/7. So we did it as quickly as we can. And also, I don't know, my style as president, I'd like to take a step back when I hear about a breaking news item. Some other news organizations did the same thing. I mean, we just saw the New York Times write about it today. They just published a story today. So it was just unfolding on Friday night. And, I'm under I like to do best practices of waiting, taking a step back and making sure I understand the whole situation before I speak on behalf of our big organization. So that usually, pays off for me. That has in my experience. So we only waited one other day till Saturday. So it was posted last night on our channels, on our social media channels. So check out Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. You will see it there. We're also going to make more of an opportunity with this letter from the Reporters Committee for Freedom of the Press. That is already posted on the website, and we will issue a press release on it tomorrow as well. Does that help, Don?
Yes.
Okay, good. I'm glad. Okay, I'm looking around for more questions or comments. Emily Block, do you have your hand up again?
Hey, yeah, just really quickly, I just want to acknowledge that I think Don's critique is valid, and we've heard it. He's not the only one to say something like that. I think even internally, we were like, can we say something now? But there's just like a lot of moving parts. I do think that this has highlighted a need to kind of take a step back once this dust clears and look at how we can, post a statement that says something quick, that we are acknowledging something has happened and that we're looking into it as it, develops. And that's something that we're already talking about as a board. So it's not lost on us. And I think it's something that we all can stand to improve on, but are acknowledging, and we're all working on it.
Agreed. And I certainly acknowledge Don's points, but, I think a lot of people don't understand the process. And, SPJ headquarters is not a 24/7 newsroom. So Friday night at 11 is a challenge, but we did get the statement up as fast as we possibly could the next day. So I wanted everybody to understand the process of it. If I could make it happen like that, I would. But we did the best we could. All right, let's see. Ashanti, do you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to what Claire mentioned. I also want to make sure that people are clear that we also want to make sure that we are doing our due diligence and making sure that we have all the facts and have all the information. So we're not putting out a statement that might be erroneous or inaccurate, or if because we don't have all the facts and the facts come out and we're wrong. So we can't just be 100% reactive. We have to do our due diligence, which I will commend Adam for all of the phone calls that he made to get additional information that we needed, Claire for jumping on things and talking to our interim ED. All of these things were happening in real time, but we have to make sure that we are right. It's not about being first. It's about making sure that we are right when we are pushing this information out. So I would just ask everyone for their patience and understanding that we want to make sure that when we do put out a statement, when we do make sure that we are putting our support behind an organization or a journalist, that we have it right. And so that takes time, just like all of us are journalists and we don't go with a story right when it happens. We have to do our due diligence. We have to check our sources. We have to make these calls. And so I would caution everyone before they kind of jump on and say, you guys should have done this quicker. I think we did this as quick as we possibly could, even evidenced by the fact that we were all meeting on a Sunday night. to make sure that we have this vote and have this funding available for this newsroom that was attacked. And so I just want everyone to just take a breath and take a beat and understand that at the end of the day, we want to make sure we get this right the first time. And that sometimes means it may take 24 hours or maybe even a little bit longer. But know that we are doing our due diligence behind the scenes, even though you may not see it. And I don't necessarily think that it is important for us to be first. Got to be right. I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Ashanti. Just quick add too is, you know, the incident just happened 57 hours ago. It was Friday morning at 11 o'clock. So one of the first, when I heard that the editor's house was also raided, it just, you know, gave me pause. Like, how is the editor and his personal belongings in his house related to the case? So that, to me, I take a step back. And like Ashanti said, I really don't, I'm eager to get it first, but I'm more eager to get it right. That's, you know, that's our training as journalists. And so best practice is to just give it some time and let it sort itself out and then make a statement. And just to let you know, the letter that just got released today from the Reporters Committee for the Freedom of the Press, that was prepared yesterday for release in the afternoon, but held back until today. They needed another 24 hours just to clarify some of the details of the case and confirm some of the information. So they held their letter for an extra day just as a best practice. So it does happen and it pays off. And please don't assume that we're not acting on things. We are acting as quickly as we can. So that's the part I wanted to clarify. All right, let me just see. I see a few other hands. Adam Sennett.
Yeah, I just sort of wanted to reiterate what you and Ashanti had just said. I mean, our statement last night that we put out, it did very well, despite, you know what I'm saying, it wasn't the first. I think it was right. We got 66 retweets, 84 likes, and it reached almost 13,000 people. You know, I'd also, like you said, the Reporters Committee for the Freedom of the Press, they held it back for a day. They just released theirs today, and I think it's the best statement that's been released so far. It's detailed. It explains everything. There's clearly a lot of research that went into it, and you know, I thought I learned the most about the legal side of this case because they put so much work into it. So I think it was worth it. I think they clearly showed the value of waiting to get the facts right.
Thank you. And really, kudos to all the volunteers working. We're all volunteers working on this together. I don't know, Don, you have your hand up still from the last time or a new hand? Leftover hand? Okay.
No, new hand.
Hand, go right ahead.
I would just make the argument that, you know, police raiding a newsroom is prima facie assault on the First Amendment. I mean, we can quickly say that, you know, from what it looks like, we condemn this as, you know, a violation of the Privacy Protection Act, and, you know, a chilling of the First Amendment rights of the paper.
Okay. All right. Thank you for adding that on. Derek, your hand is still up, leftover, or is it a new hand?
It's a new one. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I obviously can't make a motion, but to circle back with what Emily said, I think a full page ad with the letter so the community knows these powerful organizations behind the effort would be helpful. I don't know how much that would cost. And then also, I like the idea of T-shirts, and perhaps the T-shirts can maybe replenish the LDF if it needs to, or that money can go to the newspaper directly, whatever the board decides to do with the proceeds from those shirts. It might also be a good idea to have those shirts for sale at the convention, because this will still be a hot button issue. And just on the answer of equipment, you know, this is obviously a different state, much more egregious than what we went through here in Ohio, but we still haven't gotten our equipment back. So I don't expect them to hope. I mean, I hope they get their equipment back, but I don't know. I don't know. It's a different process, but I do hope that somebody makes a motion for the letter to be printed and that the T-shirts to be sold online. Maybe put out a blast on the email list this week when the T-shirts are designed for people to purchase, and then also sell them at the convention. Thank you.
Yeah, those are great ideas. Fred Brown, parliamentarian. I'm not so sure they require motions. Am I right about that? Because we
you are right about that. I think that can be done by staff. Yeah.
Okay, because we do have a motion on the floor right now, right? So
right.
Are we to move the question?
I want to call the question.
Hey, do we need to state?
You just vote. If you call the question, you have to vote on that.
All right, let's vote. Israel, can you take roll call vote, please?
Yep. Again, the motion is for the board to approve $20,000 in grant funding to help with the legal cost of this case. All right, Claire.
Yes.
Israel is a yes. Ashanti?
Yes.
Emily?
Hell yes.
Daniela?
Same.
I'm gonna when I do the record, Emily, I'm gonna put the hell yes, by the way.
Asterisk.
Please do. Absolutely.
Jody.
Yes.
Adam.
Yes.
Kevin.
Yes.
And Peter.
Yes.
All right. Do you want to tally the votes for us, Israel?
It's a unanimous vote. So, Mark, the board has approved up to $20,000. So now, I guess we'll go back to the Legal Defense Fund Committee. But at this point, you will be the point person that then you'll be communicating, and you've got the approval of the board to $8,000, like our normal process.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'll be in contact with the lawyer.
Yeah, absolutely. And then if you can either communicate through the Legal Defense Fund, or when we pass on, usually what we do is when there are cases, we pass it on to the board. And so we'll try to at least keep the board updated as to the legal case, so that way the board knows what's going on, and we can have everybody informed and updated if that's possible.
Excellent points. Good.
Yep.
Can I make a motion to adjourn?
We just have old business, new business. I put that on there, but I think we brainstormed other ideas. I kind of saved that item for in case there were other ideas to help out the newspaper in Kansas, but I think we covered that. So yes, Ashanti, move on to the next item, number 6.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Can I get a second?
I think second. So, that's right. Ashanti, you said you're first, so you get the second.
Okay, ready to vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Abstained? Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you all for coming tonight with a good result. Appreciate it. Have a good
Thank you, everyone.